So in this video we're going to be looking into Bonehead from Oasis. Now I think that Bonehead is the glue of Oasis, and he was the one that gave him such a massive sound, certainly in the live performances. Now there's a lot of information about the recording technique for the 3 albums that he did with Oasis. We're not going to go too much into the actual studio recordings, but we are going to look at what he played on some of those songs which may have helped contributed to that massive wall of sound, both in the studio and also live too. So I think a natural place sometimes for these videos to start is the equipment. So we are going to touch on the equipment, but we're not going to go into too much detail. So it's quite well known that Bonehead uses the Epiphone Riviera, and that is what he also used in the studio and also on live performances. From some research, he plugs it into a Marshall amp with a cab. Pretty straightforward setup, to be honest. It's a lot of gain on the amp, and that's kind of it. So first up, we're going to be looking at the technique of Bonehead. Now I think there's somewhat of a belief that Bonehead just played bar chords or power chords, and while the bulk of his playing in Oasis is that, there's actually a few little tweaks that he added and perhaps gave Oasis that big sound. So we're going to touch on 2 songs. We're going to do Supersonic first. So in Supersonic, it obviously starts off with Noel Gallagher playing that intro lead. So after that intro, the rest of the band essentially comes in, and this is what Bonehead is playing. So did you notice the slight difference that he added? If you didn't, it is actually the use of using the open low E string. So I'm going to play it for you now, taking out that open low E. So that sounds okay, it sounds pretty meaty, but when you add in the open low E now, just gives you that little bit of more of a dirty edge, because we're playing the open low E combined with our 5th on the 4th fret of the A. You get that dirty growl. It's almost a little bit of a hard rock kind of metal edge adding that low E. So this clip here is from Wembley, and we're going to do a little bit of a comparison here of the sound for when Bonehead wasn't in the band to when he was in the band. Now the part is played technically perfectly at Wembley, but for me the same sound isn't there. There's just something about Bonehead's playing, his instrument, the amp, etc, just makes it sound much bigger. I'm now going to include a clip of Supersonic played live on MTV. And this clip really does emphasise this sound that comes from Bonehead, because you've got Noel Gallagher doing the intro for Supersonic, and then he goes off into his lead guitar part in the verse. And this performance is particularly well mixed because you can hear a lot of the other instruments, and you can hear that when Bonehead comes in with the bass and with the drums, the sound is absolutely massive. So the second song that we are going to look at is Rock and Roll Star. I've actually learned this for my band, and it was quite interesting to see some of the techniques that he used. I watched quite a few live videos just to see what he is actually doing, and he's actually doing something that's used quite a lot in blues. Very status quo. Let me just play you an example of Rock and Roll Star and what he's actually playing. This is quite a good example because essentially revolves around this B major chord, but in the intro he's kind of hitting that chord, but then he's dropping his 3rd and his little finger down onto the 9th fret of the D and the G. So he's kind of got like a little bit of a bar with your 1st finger, and that's quite a heavy sound. So there's your bar chord, and then you you've got that second chord, it's a slash chord. Then it goes to C sharp minor, an A, and then we have these ninth chords. I didn't know this until I watched some live videos, so I'm going to put a still up in the corner now. Where you can just see that he's doing those ninth chords, so the stretchy blues chords. So again, I think this is just another example of the things that he added in that is not just bar chords, it's not just power chords. You know, he's added some ninth chords in there, he's added a slash chord in Supersonic, he was adding those low E notes. You know, and let's not pretend he's doing something massively technical, but he's adding in little things that, for me, is the glue of Oasis sound in the early days and what helped contribute to it. Because you can watch some performances of Oasis with Bonehead in the band and then without the band, technically probably better when he wasn't in the band, but the sound for me wasn't the same. It wasn't as big, and I think Bonehead is a large part of that. And just to give another point as to why I think Bonehead is the glue behind Oasis is Liam Gallagher's solo performances. Now again, you could pick really any Liam Gallagher performance where he doesn't play with Bonehead, and to me I think the band kind of sounds a little bit weak, to be honest, the sound and also the actual playing of it. But there's some really good videos. There's one of a Radio X performance where Bonehead is in Liam Gallagher's band, and again they actually kick off with Rock and Roll Star. When everything comes in, the sound's just massive, and without Bonehead there, it's been shown that the sound just isn't as big. And although we're not going to go into detail in this video, it could be argued that when Bonehead and Griggsy left the band, that Oasis's output declined quite a bit. But there's a few other factors with that other YouTubers will cover, you know, drugs and things. But I don't think it's a coincidence with Bonehead that when he was in the band in the early days, the sound was massive, the songs were really good, and I know they were wrote by Noel Gallagher, and to be honest, the stuff that Bonehead plays in the studio, Noel probably played or wrote that. But in the live performances, they sounded massive back in the day, and then when he left, they didn't sound as massive. Fast forward to the present day with Liam Gallagher's band, again, without Bonehead, it sounds okay, it sounds good, but then when he's in there, it's just massive again. And that's why I think that Bonehead is the glue in Oasis, and why I also think he's quite an underrated rhythm guitar player. He's not just power chords and bar chords. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, click the like button, click the subscribe and the bell. That way you'll be notified each week when I upload a guitar lesson.